Hi everyone, it's Liam here from Rating the Races. So we know some of you prefer the videos over the tweets and the written text. So let's go over the handicap hurdle changes and suggested targets for the hurdlers and the chasers. So the hurdlers will be in this video and the chasers in the next video. So the hurdlers that caught my eye at Cheltenham, who have had their marks adjusted or just had their marks adjusted that now make them quite well handicapped. Let's start off with Bold Endeavour, who had been over fences and had been doing okay. I mean, he was disappointing when he got beat by Oscar Elite at Ascot. But they decided to both drop him in trip and drop him back over hurdles for the Coral Cup. And to be honest, he ran a good race. If you actually watch the race, he looked a bit outpaced. I don't know, about 6 furlongs, maybe a mile from home. And Nico de Boinville moved him to the outside. He'd always been ridden from the outside, but he moved him right on the outside, coming down the hill into the second last. And the amount of ground he must have given away by doing that, and then swinging wide into the straight. When he turned into the straight, it looked like his chance had gone, and he was probably 8th or 9th at the time. And Nico de Boinville wasn't particularly hard on him. And yet he ran on really strongly to get up for 5th, and the front 4 are all decent horses. Let's have a look. He was beaten by Languedan, who was laid out for the race, Camprond, who was laid out for the race, An Epic Song, who was the unexposed improver that got well supported late on, and Scaramanga, who Willie Mullins has clearly got a bit more out of. It was a good race. Captain Combi travelled well, and Bold Endeavour was able to beat him. Yeah, I think Bold Endeavour was quite eye-catching there. And the handicapper dropped him £1. He dropped him £1 to 139. And I think they'll end up here. In the 3-mile race at Aintree, the step up in trip should suit. He got outpaced over 2-mile 5 at Cheltenham. 3-mile at Aintree will hopefully suit him. Dropped him £1. And there's not going to be the Irish horses either. So if we looked at that English rate, the Coral Cup, for example, we could take out An Epic Song and we'd take out Scaramanga. That would leave Languedan and Camprond. Now, Languedan has probably done his winning there. I imagine he'll end up in another handicap, probably the 2.5 handicap, not the 3-mile handicap. Camprond, again, doesn't want to be going over 3 mile. So we might end up with, Bold Endeavour here on his own in a race that he can certainly run a really big race in. So I'm quite keen on Bold Endeavour for when he steps up in trip and goes to Aintree for that 3-miler. And that's where I'd be going with him. The second horse I want to talk about is Pembroke. Pembroke went off the 9-2 favourite or second favourite. Let's just have a quick check. He went off the 9-2 favourite for the county hurdle. Dan Skelton actually won the race anyway with Favois. But the way Dan has always talked about Pembroke, particularly after he got beat in the Grade 2 at Cheltenham, he's always thought he's a very good horse and he thinks he's well handicapped. And when Dan thinks he's got a horse that's well handicapped, I would generally agree that he is well handicapped. And clearly at Cheltenham, he just ran a completely duff race. Didn't work. Personally, I don't think he needed to be dropped back in trip. I thought he ran perfectly satisfactory at Cheltenham, over 2.5, and just got beat by the better horse on the day. He didn't need to drop back in trip, and that might have been the reason for his poor showing. With that in mind, where do I think they'll end up with him? This race here, the 2.5 mile at Aintree. They won it last year with Languedan, who had also gone off favourite for his race at Cheltenham before turning up here. Obviously, Languedan got brought down in the Martin Pipe that year and then turned up here and won. Pembroke disappointed in the county hurdle this year and then turns up here and probably, goes very, very close. So that's where I'd be running Pembroke. If Dan is convinced that he doesn't want the 2.5 and he's adamant that he wants 2 mile, maybe this is where they'll turn up. The Scottish Champion Hurdle. Obviously, they were unlucky last year with West Cork, who ran a really good race. For me, I would go for the Aintree race, and you can run West Cork here himself, where he'll probably take all the beating. Split your horses up. You've got 2 big chances there rather than just the one in Pembroke if you keep to the 2.5 mile trip. Yeah, if he turns up in this 2.5, I'd be really keen on Pembroke. Hopefully, having disappointed over 2, you might get a bit of a bigger price than maybe you should do. 7s, 8-1 sort of thing. And then he can be really well supported, like Langadam was last year, into the 4-1 favourite. The next horse I want to talk about is Petit Tonnerre, and actually Petit Tonnerre could also end up in the same race as Pembroke. Now, Petit Tonnerre is only a 5-year-old. He's only had a few runs. He's very, very unexposed. And if you watch his race at Cheltenham in the County Hurdle, he clearly demonstrated that he wants to go back up in trip. They'd been running him over 2.5. You can see 2.5 at Aintree, where he ran really well behind Peking Rose and something else that I can't think who it was at the beginning of the season. He then ran well at Newbury, disappointed at Kempton, but I think a lot of horses pulled up that day. That was the Lanzarote Hurdle, and horses that have pulled up have come out and won since, including Outlaw Peter at the weekend. Then he ran okay at Ascot before finishing 7th at Cheltenham recently, when he stayed on. It was probably one of the best finishes in any race. If you look for a horse that's staying on really strongly, Petit Tonnerre is the one that really caught my eye. Definitely wants to go back up in trip. I think the race was a good race anyway. It was Cheltenham, wasn't it? So it should be. Wants to go back up in trip, and this is where I would run him in this 2.5 handicap. Interestingly, back in 7th here was Peking Rose, who went on to win that race, as I mentioned, in October, beating Petit Tonnerre. Why could Petit Tonnerre do better than Peking Rose? Well, Petit Tonnerre is only a 5-year-old. He's still, surely he's still improving. When he finished 3rd, he was only 4, and I think that's a huge effort at 4 to finish 3rd in a good handicap. And to finish 7th, I think there'll still be more to come when they go back up in trip. The next horse I want to talk about is 50 Ball, who turned up in the Martin Pipe, which should have been the right trip, and to be honest, disappointed a bit. Finished 12th, yeah, that was disappointing. He's now been to Cheltenham twice though, as you can see. He also finished 16th in a County Hurdle in 2021. Maybe he just doesn't like the hustle and bustle of the County Hurdle, or the Cheltenham Festival even. Finished 12th, you can see, never really traded much shorter than his off. But you can see he's got these really high R figures, suggesting he is well handicapped. So if he is well handicapped, where do you go? Well, I think this is where they turn up, don't they? Back here for this handicap hurdle at Ascot. I don't think it's conditional jockeys this year. But I mean, if he turned up off his current mark, he's 1-2-3. He won this race last year off 1-2-7. Last year this was on the 27th of March, but it's a little bit later this year. It's not until the 2nd of April, so he's got another few days to get over his Cheltenham exertions, which shouldn't have been a lot because he didn't really get involved in that race in the Martin Pipe. But yeah, for £4 lower mark, this has to be where he goes next, to Ascot. 2 more to go in the hurdlers. The first one is Glory and Fortune, who finished a well-beaten 20th in the County Hurdle. Did he beat anything? He beat 2 home and 2 pulled up. He beat Prairie Dancer and Ganapathy, who were massive prices. So was Glory and Fortune, to be fair. And he didn't run too bad. He actually made his move turning for home and was there or thereabouts and then faded away. But again, you can see he's got some really high R figures, suggesting that he can, or is, very well handicapped. So where do you go with Glory and Fortune? This race here, the Sussex Champion Hurdle. I believe he's won at Plumpton. He has indeed won at Plumpton before, so Plumpton isn't, the course is fine. It's a much easier race than what he's been running in. If we look at last year's, granted Oaken Risk, it was probably ahead of his mark, having gone on to win a Betfair Hurdle as well. But if you look at those behind, which is the general level of the Sussex Champion Hurdle, pretty average, pretty moderate, and Glory and Fortune would have an excellent chance of bouncing back to some form in the Sussex Champion Hurdle. The final horse I want to talk about is Epatante. Now, she ran disappointingly in the mares, and initially I was thinking that she needed to be retired. But if you took that race out, just ignore that one run, she's still running reasonably well, firsts and seconds, and I mean, she won at Aintree this time last year in a Grade 1. So, what would I do with her? I'd send her to Aintree. No, I wouldn't. I'd send her to Haydock. I'd send her to Haydock for the 2 mile handicap, the Swinton. Why would I run Epatante in this race? Okay, she's not as good as she used to be in my opinion, but her form over 2 miles was good enough. 2 seconds to Constitution Hill and then winning a mare's listed event at Doncaster. If she turned up against these horses in this race here, would she beat those off top weight? Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, Ngolo, Severance, Sebastopol, Ingleby Hollow, Anna Bonina, none of those would have a chance against Epatante in a handicap, even with Epatante having to give away lumps of weight. And it's not a bad prize. It's 57 grand to the winner. I mean, it's a race that they might as well go for with Epatante. Now she's on the decline. And then, if she was to win that, you could then even look at retiring her on the back of a win. She's not going to be good enough for a champion hurdle or a mare's hurdle next season. Handicaps is where she's got to go. And do they really want to do that with a dual champion hurdle winner? Why don't they go out on a high, winning a big handicap, and then retire her? So what's there, 5 there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 horses that I hope to see in handicaps, over hurdles and the handicaps. Just a quick recap. Bold Endeavour, I hope to see at Aintree in the 3 mile. Pembroke, I hope to see in the 2.5, but could also run in the 2 Scottish Champion hurdle. Petit Tonnerre, I hope to see at Aintree in the 2.5. 50 Ball, hopefully goes to Ascot. Glory and Fortune could go to Plumpton for the Sussex Champion hurdle, and Epatante to drop in class, end up in a handicap and run in the Swinton at Haydock.